Hello everybody, so here is Black Angel again, and I'm here to talk to you about abstraction in INTPs. So this is the topic that I'm going to talk about today. So if I have a weird voice and I'm not my usual self, it's because I'm going through stuff and I have a bad cold, so that's why. Anyway, so what do we want to talk about? Abstraction in INTPs. I'm going to talk specifically about INTPs and open some parentheses about other types. I want to start from here. Intuitives in general tend towards abstract thinking. So intuitives are abstract thinkers. So that's what divides intuitives from sensors. Sensors have a more down-to-earth kind of thinking, whereas intuitives are abstract. If you want to look into research fields, that's the difference between experimental studies versus theoretical studies. People that work at the CERN are divided into two groups. There's the theorists that work on the system and particles and abstract theories that are not necessarily going to be proven, and then there's the experimenters that work on the field and test the theories. So that's the difference. It's not necessarily like that. I mean, it's not like every intuitive goes into theoretical research and every sensor goes into experimental research, but that would be the best suitable split, because intuitives have this abstract way of thinking, and sensors instead are extremely down to earth and bound to reality in one way or another. So there's two functions that mirror in some way reality, and these two functions are extroverted sensing and extroverted thinking. For this purpose, I'm going to be very clear and very, I don't know how to put it. I'm just going to mention one detail about these two functions that is important for these topics. So there's other things to say, but they don't matter for the purpose of this video. So in this case, we're going to say that extroverted sensing represents what in psychology is defined sensation. So sensation is the realization that a stimuli in the external world is happening. So it is the concrete reality at hand, basically. If there is light, you can elaborate how you see that light, but the fact that you perceive light in the first place means that there is light in the environment, or that it is an optical illusion of some sort. Anyway, your eyes are seeing light, literally, and they're seeing this difference between a situation of zero light and a situation of light. The colors that you're seeing in this video, the red at my back here, the wooden colors here and here, the pink in the corner there, well, there. All this red thing, the black, and all these colors that you're seeing on my screen, they exist in reality. They are the result of the refraction of light on objects. The fact that you call them red or that you perceive them that way, that's another stage of brain analysis. I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but we're not going into how the brain actually elaborates all this stuff, so it's just abstractly explained. That's roughly how it works. Anyway, yeah, that's extroverted sensing. The fact that our eyes and our whole being is made to realize there's something out there, to know that there is something out there. The other function that I want to mention is extroverted thinking. Why extroverted thinking? Because extroverted thinking is facts and data. When we talk about facts and data, the best way to understand what exactly we're talking about is statistics. So when we talk about facts, we're not talking about the existence of something or that something happened by itself, but it's basically an objective analysis of what is externally happening. So statistics is a very good example of extroverted thinking. So why am I mentioning these two functions specifically, talking about INTPs? Because INTPs ignore statistics and facts. They ignore extroverted thinking, and their weakness is the reality immediately in front of them. So what I'm trying to tell you is that INTPs are probably the most abstract of all types. Even more abstract than INFPs, for example. INFPs are bound to facts and statistics, so at least they share a common view of what reality looks like. Whereas INTPs do not share that common view. They ignore it. For an INTP, a statistic is merely a representation of reality according to a biased view that someone had. That's how an INTP would view statistics. So if you know an INTP that is all about statistics, they're not an INTP. That's how it works. Unless the statistic is actually supporting one of their theories. That's something to note. That's the difference between a vulnerable function and the ignoring function. A vulnerable TE, so an INFJ or an ISFJ, would not take any statistic into account. Whereas an ISTP or an INTP will take into account those statistics that support their way of thinking, their system, their idea of the world. And here comes the abstract part, because INTPs are introverted logic. They embody introverted logic. And their introverted logic is based on ignoring statistics and the common view of things. That's why introverted thinkers tend to be so innovative when it comes to research and studies. And they have a vulnerability in the realm of the physical reality at hand. This also means that they're going to ignore a lot of studies and they're going to basically create their own model of the world that is based on their intuition of potentials. So we're talking about introverted intuition. Extroverted intuition. Extroverted intuition is the intuition of potential. When we're talking about extroverted intuition, we're always talking about a fan of possibility. And we're never actually and really narrowing down to one. Except when it comes to INTPs, because their strong introverted logic makes them choose the one of those possibilities that makes the most logical sense, leaving the possibility open that choice that they made is actually not correct, in which case they're going to choose the second most logic possibility at hand. This is how, for example, the theory of the Higgs boson was born. I don't know if you know anything about the Higgs boson and what it is, but it's basically the explanation in physics of how things are held together and how particles do not move around without any meaning, but there is actually a pattern in the universe and in matter itself. So the Higgs boson was discovered around the 40s, between the 40s and the 50s, 1940 and 1950, around that time, or slightly later on. I don't know exactly. Anyway, long before the CERN was built. And it was discovered by this Mr. Higgs. That's why it's called the Higgs boson, because it's the boson that was found by Higgs and his team. So I might have mistaken the age, but it's a very long time since I first discovered this thing, and we're talking about the years after the Second World War, and he's actually very old. He's around 70, 80. He's a nice dude. If you want to look him up, he's very cute to look at. Very cute old man. He's still alive, by the way. He should be still alive. He was when the Higgs boson was confirmed. So that's how abstract a theory can be. The whole theory, the whole system of beliefs connected to physics that we have nowadays is based on the idea of this guy that the universe would be held together, so to speak, by this boson, this Higgs boson. And nobody actually knew if this Higgs boson actually existed. There was no proof that it actually existed, but the whole physics that you would study if you ever went studying physics is based on this idea. I find it adorable. Anyway, yeah, it's complete abstraction. That's also why an INTP is so aware that statistics and data are not reliable, because they could be refuted any minute. And when there was the ceremony in which they read the data that they got from the CERN, Higgs was actually sitting there, and I think it's called Peter Higgs, I'm not sure. Anyway, he was sitting there and he was so enthusiastic to hear that his theory is actually mirroring reality. He was astonished and enthusiastic. So that's how abstract an INTP's thoughts are, and that's what it means for an INTP to work in the theoretical realm. That's why INTPs rock at computer science, because they have an abstract view, a kind of it's like stereophonic, but in a visual way, mentally speaking. So they have this kind of stereo view of 360 degrees view of things from the inside and the outside, and they can see how things could potentially work. They have this ability to build in their minds the possible orientations. One mantra of ESFJs, ESTPs, and other sensory types that are close to INTPs in the way of thinking is that it is logic, and it makes logic sense. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is true. And that's why TI types are so bound to truth, INTPs included. So since INTPs do not actually understand the importance of the physical reality around them, their focus is rather on truth. So it doesn't matter if their body actually is touching this bottle of body lotion. It doesn't matter if their hand is actually touching this, as much as the fact that they can theorize that it's not actually happening. There are theories out there that say that we could be in some sort of virtual universe. You can think, for example, of Men in Black or The Matrix. There are a lot of theories out there that say that the reality we know could not be real. The physical reality we're living in could be virtually created, or we could believe we're living it, but we're actually not here. This kind of way of thinking is an INTP's way of thinking. Like I said, for INFPs, it is slightly different for the only reason that they base their knowledge and their understanding of the world on data and on the understanding of other people, so of the shared understanding. So TE is broad beliefs, so the expansion of beliefs. So if a lot of people believe that it is that way, for an INFP, it's going to be true. An INTP is going to question it. For an INTP, the fact that 7 billion people believe, 7 million, sorry, or anyway, how many we are in the world, believe that something exists or is real is not proof enough that it is. That's how an INTP thinks. So I wanted to make it clear, and I wanted to explain it because we talk a lot about TI, and it is very difficult to actually explain what TI is, because TI is very, very mechanic in some way, but also extremely abstract. If you watch the movie Agora and you pay careful attention to the main character, which is Ipasha, you're going to realize that that character there is an extremely introverted thinking type. First of all, you can see her fight against society, and she could actually possibly be an INTP. Because of the theory she elaborates at some point towards the end of the movie of how the universe works. She discovers the idea of the elliptic as a possibility for the orbit of the Earth around the Sun, when everybody believed that it was the Sun revolving around Earth back at the time. So that's a way INTPs think, and TI is your basic idea of logic, syllogism, any kind of syllogism, everything that responds to syllogism is introverted thinking. So when we talk about syllogism, the most basic example that I can give you is if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. You can see how abstract that thought is. It is not necessarily true, because a comparison could be wrong by itself, but it makes logic sense. If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. That's why TI types are so bound to truth, because they are perfectly aware that it could not be true that if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. It's the same thought as 1 + 1 = 2. A TI type is always aware that 1 glass of water plus 1 glass of water makes 1 bigger glass of water, as well as 2 glasses of water, as well as 3 glasses of water, 3 smaller glasses of water. Because if you mix fluids, you don't get 2 units, but a bigger 1 unit. And that's quite philosophical. That's also why TI types are called philosophical types, because introverted thinking is extremely philosophical. And when we're talking about INTPs, we're talking about the exponentialized version of this theoretical, abstract, and kind of in the clouds way of thinking. So an INTP is the type that is capable of studying every theory existing about the brain, then erase all that knowledge and dismiss it as unreliable, and restart from scratch with a fully new theory nobody ever heard about. If you ever watched an INTP's videos about MBTI, you're going to find a lot of theories that are not supported by the literature, but that are actually probably based on the literature and are made and built by the INTP themselves. And this is how INTPs are useful and contribute to society. They actually create new views, new perspectives, new theories, new ideas, and new possibilities of how the world works. So they embody innovation along with ENTPs. ENTPs also share the same functions. They give slightly more importance to statistics, so they're going to keep statistics into account, and their perception of reality is limited but still existing. You can think in this sense of Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was an ENTP, and the very reason why you can tell that he's an ENTP and not an INTP is that his theory all stem from the reality at hand in front of him. For example, he would be sitting with his children in a boat. There's a passage in a movie that shows this thing. I don't know if it is a real fact that happened to him or if it's just an example of his way of thinking, but that's how he actually thought. He was sitting in a boat with his children looking at stuff moving, and he had an intuition about the refraction of light on the water. And then he, with waves and everything, he created a theory, or I don't know if he created the relativity theory from there or something else, but he created a theory starting from that point. So that's in some way keeping into account the reality you have in front of you. And even if it could be dismissing of statistics, he still knew how what other theorists thought, and he was able to actually refute or confirm the theories of others based on his understanding of the experiments themselves, which is something an INTP would never waste time doing. So yeah, so maybe ENTPs are even more creative in terms of new theories and new stuff. But they tend to never bring anything to a concrete end. They're more lacking conclusive abilities. They need external help to actually become conclusive, to conclude something, to bring things to an end. Whereas INTPs tend to be a little more systematic and coordinated in their way of thinking and in their perseverance towards a goal. So if you see high systematicity and a very concrete and systematic way of taking things, of bringing things on in the person's theoretical realm, that's an INTP. Whereas lack of systematicity and a little bit of too much jumping here and there without an actual base, that's probably an ENTP. Yeah, I think I will close this here, even though there could be some more to say, but I think I gave you a lot of food for thought, and I will close this here and I will talk to you soon. Bye.